Hello, this is Chef John from foodwishes.com with New England Beach Pizza. That's right, when I heard this called America's Worst Pizza, I knew I had to give it a try. And as promised, it was terrible, but also terribly good. And is it possible for both those things to be true? Well, yes and no. And we'll discuss this later, but for now, let's go ahead and get started with the sauce, which will start by sizzling some garlic and some olive oil over medium heat. And not a long sizzle, just a brief sizzle like 30 seconds. Okay, we want our oil infused with that garlic flavor, but we don't want the garlic to brown. So after about a half a minute, we will add our tomato paste, which of course has a lot of moisture, and that will basically stop the garlic from getting any darker. And once we have stirred things around for about a half a minute, we will transfer in some plain tomato sauce, or a prepared marinara, or anything similar. And as you know, we always like to rinse out the jar with a little bit of cold fresh water, just to rinse out that last little bit. And then we will season this up with a little bit of dried oregano, as well as a nice big pinch of optional chili flakes. And then we will follow that with the star of the show, a stupid amount of sugar. Oh yeah, New England beach pizza is supposed to be very sweet, as in borderline dessert sweet. So against my better judgment, I stirred that in. And that is pretty much going to be it for our sauce. We'll just wait for that to come back to a simmer, and then cook it stirring for about 10 or 15 minutes, at which point it will be ready to use. And depending on how much salt was in your tomato sauce, you might want to taste and adjust with more of that. And once we do have our way too sweet pizza sauce done, we can move on to rolling and stretching our pizza dough. And for this, you're going to need 24 ounces of prepared dough, which you can make from scratch using one of our many recipes. But one ball of pizza dough from the store should be just about perfect. And what we'll do using just enough flour so it doesn't stick is roll that out until it's about a ½ inch thick, using a rolling pin. And once we get it to about here, we'll switch to our hands, and we will attempt to stretch that into a rectangle that's approximately 15 by 10 inches. And no, it certainly doesn't have to be exact, because what we'll do once we're close, and we've dusted that with maybe a little more flour so it doesn't stick, we will flop that over onto our hands, and then transfer it onto a very generously olive-oiled sheet pan. And because the pan is generously olive-oiled, that dough is going to slide around quite easily as we press it and stretch it where we need it. And as you may have experienced, sometimes the pizza dough is too elastic and it won't stay in place. Well, if that happens to you, just stop and let it rest for a couple minutes, and then come back and try again. And what will happen is that dough will relax, and you'll see you'll eventually be able to get it right up to the edge of the pan. And once we've achieved full coverage, we will grab our sauce, and we will spread that over evenly. And by the way, the sauce recipe is going to make a little extra, so don't feel like you need to transfer it all on. That's probably going to be too much. Oh, and apparently we're supposed to go all the way to the edges, but I do like to leave a little bit of dough peeking through. But anyway, you decide. I mean, you are, after all, the Bruce Lee of how much crust we're going to see. But either way, once that's sauced, we'll go ahead and apply some shredded mozzarella to the top. And just like the sauce, we're not supposed to use a lot. So it wasn't easy for me, and it's probably not going to be easy for you, but we need to be a little bit stingy with the cheese. And please keep in mind that we are going to top this with provolone cheese at the end. So there's more cheese a-coming. And that's it. Once mozzarellaed, this is ready to transfer into the center of a 475-degree oven for about 15 to 20 minutes, or until our crust is cooked and our cheese is browned. And it hopefully looks like this. And then, as promised, while still piping hot, we will top this with 12 slices of provolone, or as the guy at the deli calls it, provolone. And if you do this right away while everything's still hot, that cheese is probably going to melt sufficiently, at which point we could cut this up and start enjoying it. And by enjoying, I mean making fun of it. We can also top it with the cheese and then pop it back in the oven if we want it hotter. But anyway, that wasn't my main concern. It was more that the appearance was so boring and uninteresting. So I decided to sprinkle over some chopped Italian parsley, which somehow made it worse. But hey, that's fine. If it's going to taste terrible, it might as well look terrible. Although at this point I was just assuming, so I went ahead and grabbed a piece to go in for the official taste. And I was happy to see we got at least a little bit of browning on the bottom. Okay, if you don't get any color, put it back in until it browns a little bit. But anyway, I bit in. And really, honestly, I did not know what to think. Yes, it's true. This kind of is a terrible pizza. All right, the sauce really is too sweet. And even though we did add the extra cheese on top, it was still quite uninteresting and very one-dimensional. which made the fact that I kept eating it and wanted more very confusing. I mean, can a pizza really be good and terrible at the same time? Well, if it can, this is the one. Although by now this pizza was pretty much room temp, so I wasn't sure I was going to be able to do an accurate analysis. So I went ahead and heated a piece up and continued my highly scientific evaluation. And as I mentioned, you will hear this described as dessert-like, and it really is almost that sweet, which is probably the thing that keeps having you take another bite, especially since I used a little bit of chili flake in the sauce. And no matter what the format, that combination of sweet heat, especially on a starchy, cheesy delivery system, is almost always an enjoyable thing to eat. So to summarize, would I ever make New England beach pizza again? Well, the answer is no. Definitely not. But if I was on a beach in New England, near a snack bar or pizza place that served this, and I was very, very hungry, and I wasn't sure where we parked the car, I would maybe possibly order a piece of this. So there's really no way for me to tell how you're going to feel about this, and the only way to find out is for you to make one, which is why I'll end the video by saying, I really do hope you give this a try soon. Allegedly. So please follow the links below for the ingredient amounts, a printable written recipe, and much more info as usual. And as always, enjoy.